Exactly. We're live on my Instagram. Hey, Mom. You're the only person that's...
The only person.
I've got one
Yeah,
person
it's
tuned in.
literally just you.
Yeah, my mom
hey,
joined
Mom.
too.
Just
Hi,
the
Mom.
hermano.
Oh, and your sister just joined.
My sister. Hola, hermana. Te quiero.
Oh, my
No,
God.
brother.
No, brother.
I love it.
Just the sister.
The only people that really love us. Mom. Mom's always tuned
Yeah,
in.
my mom just joined too.
Exactly. Hey, Mom. Hey, Mom. Thanks for being here. So today, we're going to have a conversation on strength. I'm joined by two gentlemen who I believe, have made their professional lives and probably their personal lives as well. They've made their lives, in some ways, a focus around developing functional strength, mentally. I'm going to just assume emotionally because you're both tough, and that's going to be the conversation today. I'm going to let each of you guys introduce yourselves so we can hear a little bit about your background and how you got here. So, Brandon, let's start with you. Give us a little bit of your history and how you found yourself in the world of functional strength, optimal performance training for professional athletes.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start. I'm originally from New York. When I started this fitness journey, I actually had nothing to do with performance. I was in like a rough spot after high school. I was trying to figure out exactly what I was going to do, and I wasn't in the best shape of my life. So a lot of mental battles going on with that. And during that time, I had a couple things to make the beginning story short, but I had a bunch of friends leave for college, and I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. And I was overweight at that point. I was not in good shape. I wasn't taking care of myself. And that summer, when I was 18, I lost 70 pounds. So it was, like I said, it's a little bit of a short story on how that actually.
You jumped right over all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All my friends left me. I was really fat, and then I lost 70 pounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the short version. But so I had a similar experience in the sense that all of my friends also went to college, and I didn't have a college. I had no plans. My grades were so. I was a terrible academic student, so college wasn't even an option for me, really. But even if I could have gone, I don't know what I would have focused on. So I relate to being left. Everybody's, because when you're a young person, that's kind of a big deal when you're in a little town and everybody's cruising off.
Yeah, and I think the hardest part was exactly that. During that time, everyone was like, "Oh, this is what I'm doing with the rest of my life. I'm going to this big school or this expensive school." And for me, I didn't know, nor did I actually want to leave home at that point. So I ended up going to a community college, and during that time, I really got to just focus on myself because, like I said, my friends had left, and I wasn't really in the mood to make new friends at that point. So I literally took that 6 months and just hyper focused on myself. And
well, how did you get overweight?
Italian family. Okay. Sorry, Mom. But
sorry, Mom. Don't be mad at us. Yeah, don't be upset.
No, it was
like he's beautiful when he's fat. I love him. Okay, yeah.
I mean, my grandma calls me too skinny now, so that's
exactly right. You're like in excellent shape. She's like, no.
No, I think it's just.
Look at him. He's starving. Look at me. Who's ever looked at this guy and said he's starving? It's like,
Yeah, but just kind of like a lifestyle of growing up. When you're bored, you eat. When you're happy, you eat. When you're sad, you eat. Family, you eat. And
what is your age?
I'm 28.
Because you're from a generation. I'm almost twice as old as you. So, your generation had some interesting crutches that even in my generation we didn't have technology.
Yeah.
So being outside and playing is what you did, because if you didn't do that, you had nothing to do. So you're not going to sit inside mostly and read books.
Yeah.
If you're a super energetic kid. But with your generation, you had a lot of technology. You had tons of games and tons of ways to avoid just being outside and being physical. Were you one of those kids? Did you fall into that a little bit?
Yeah, I wouldn't fully blame technology. I think it was, like I said, it was a lot of like personal decisions or just being in the type of family I was in, you know? And it's not bad. I'm not saying that any of that was bad because my family cared for me, you know, the most, you know, out of anybody. But it was just eating was just one of those things that was easy to do, you know? And I didn't handle the situation well. I didn't handle saying no to food. And it was one of those things where it just built up, you know? And it was just, you don't pay attention to it until you get to a point and you're like, oh, wow, like I'm not in the best shape. You know, I don't feel good about myself. I don't like the way I look. And instead of, you know, because at that point, obviously there's two paths people go with that. They either go down the, all right, I'm going to fix this, or they go down the, you know, it's the excuses path. Like it's genetics. It's, I can't do this. I'm not able to fix this. And I knew I didn't want to be in that path, you know, because I'd been around so many people in my life that didn't take care of themselves. And I knew for me, the way that I was didn't fit with like the way that I thought I could be. So I had like a mental battle there for a while. And
What age, what age do you think you were, like, were you obese or overweight? I'm going to use the term, you know, so many ways to phrase it, but were you overweight when you were a kid, or did that slowly start to sort of, find a sort of a peak or a crescendo at a certain age?
I think it was just like a constant increase,
Okay.
like throughout age, you know. And one of the things that was always there, and I'll say this, right, because my mom was always someone who was huge into fitness, like my entire life. And she was always never like forcing it on me, but she was always like, I'm going to go to the gym if you want to come, you know. And there was a lot of times in that, you know, I'd say like 12 to 18 age where I did go for a little bit and then I'd stop, or I'd go and I'd stop. And it was like a constant back and forth, which is very normal, you know. And as I've done this professionally now, I see how normal it is, but I also see why it is normal, because it's very easy to jump in and out if you don't have guidance or you don't have
A mission of some kind, right?
Yeah, if you're not chasing something, and if you're not really, it's not so much about the end goal of losing the weight. It's more about actually understanding that it is a process, and like if you follow it the way you're supposed to, like it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people they get caught up in not understanding that exactly is the goal is there for us to obviously build a path, but getting there is just like these daily steps, you know?
Yeah, because I'm always impressed by people. I've always had trouble gaining weight.
Yeah, we were
I was
talking
a
about that.
super
Yeah.
skinny kid, yeah. So I've never been able to fully relate to a person who's every time they're eating, they're like, "Oh Jesus, I'm going to get a little heavier from that," or a person who's ever gotten heavy and is now tasked with needing to lose weight, which I look at and I go, man, that's got to be tough. I mean, it's tough. I'll be straightforward. It's tough to gain weight.
Yeah, I mean, I think both ends. I've had, my cousin is someone who I'm very close to, and he's struggled his whole life trying to gain weight. And he's like built like you. He's just long, and he's put in a lot of time and effort, and he has to eat. And like, I think people forget that as well. Like we were just talking, like as much as some of us like have to be careful with how we eat, there's some of us that literally like to do that type of thing have to make a conscious effort to continuously eat like throughout the day.
Yeah, I don't think people get how unpleasant it is to eat when you don't want to eat.
When you've eaten 6 times that day,
No,
and it's like now I got to shove peanut butter.
You feel like your stomach is literally just rejecting the entire, and you're trying to swallow food. It's very unpleasant to try to bulk up and get that.
And like I said, there's struggles on both sides, and it's not. I think that obviously in today's world, there's a lot more of like my issue, which is, bad relationships with food, bad understandings of food, too much time on people's hands. And, kind of like, I know that you guys are talking here because of how you run everything. It's like, eat as much as you need to, right? But like, wait, be conscious, put your fork down, chew, right? These are simple things that not a lot of kids are taught. And, they have so many options with food that you just eat, it's not like you're thinking about it. It's just like, okay, I'm going to go see what's in the, in the pantry. I'm bored. So you end up having, bad habits that lead to it, right? Not drinking enough water, not having enough stuff to do, literally, like activities. And then on top of that, having, poor information or relationship with food and understanding like it's a tool that can help us, right? We need it, but not to the point that it's affecting us in a lot of ways.
And then we have incredible access like we've never had before to food.
Yeah, and every
so
shape
much
and
food.
yeah,
There's so much cheap food and so much
Food
just
like food, yeah.
but what we think is food, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Yeah,
you weren't raiding the cabinet for carrots.
of course not. Of course
Do you
not.
know what I mean? Let's be honest. You weren't like, man, if I could get another cucumber in, I'd just be fucking. I'm craving cucumber. How about you? Hey, let's go get some cucumbers.
Oh my God, please.
Dude, your people, two parents would fall over if they're like 12-year-olds were like, hey, let's go grab some cucumbers. Are you also feeling cucumber hungry?
Yeah.
So
Mine was chicken cutlet.
yeah, chicken cutlets. Hey, let's get a couple chicken cutlets. I love it. Hey, bro, let's go make some chicken cutlet. Okay, totally get that. Now, how did you become? Let's sort of take it from there. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And you could pick it up from that point of college. Everybody's gone. You're losing weight. You got there, and all the way to becoming, a training coach for professional UFC fighters, and one of them being the legendary Amanda Nunes.
Yeah.
How did you get from there to there?
Yeah, I mean, so actually with the fighting stuff, that was never my intention. Like I actually made an effort to not coach athletes my entire life, and not to avoid them, but like training those types of people is hard. And I think some people look at it and they're like, oh, he trains Amanda, that must be awesome. And it is, like having the relationship, but the stress that comes along with that as a coach and knowing that, I remember the first time I walked into Amanda's gym and I was scared shitless. I was like, what if I fought? Like,
Yeah,
what if?
right.
Because it's not
There's millions of dollars in
It's-
her career,
Yeah,
her
and-
legacy, all that shit's on the line.
And this was like a comeback to her. Like she had lost the fight before. She made changes. She made a big change, right? And I'll
You
get
were
more
one of
into
those-
that.
And you were on that
Yeah.
change team.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot to prove.
Yeah, and like I said, for me, I'll get more into that after because that's a good story in and of itself. But it was one of those things where I made an effort to like almost not do it. And like my background is actually in like rehab work, injury prevention, older population, general population, because that's what I love, and that's what I've always had a passion for, is helping people who don't know how to use the gym, because that's where I was at that point, right? And kind of bringing it back when I was 18, there was a lot of stuff I didn't know, and there was a lot of help that I wish I had, and I wish I had someone like me, like I wish I had someone who was willing to sit down and explain to you and not be a dick about it, but like actually talk to someone about like, how do I look at a dumbbell? How do I pick an exercise to do? How do I progress that exercise? How do I regress that exercise? How do I actually look at fitness in a way that isn't sets and reps, but like, okay, I can challenge myself, not only physically, but mentally and grow, And with that being said, when I started this journey myself, there was a lot that obviously I needed to work on from a personal level that I started with physically. And for me, that's why the gym is so important, or even what you do and martial arts it's so important, because it's the lowest hanging fruit to get better at that stuff, right? There's so much that we can work on a daily basis. And I think everybody in this room can write a list down of things that they want to work on and they want to improve. And I think just this idea of building up momentum through movement is number one, just because it's so easy to build that habit of wake up, go to the gym, get a lift in, and have that be one of the first things that we can stack on top of the rest of it, right?
If I could insert this
Yeah.
in a second, like, we've got all these students to our left and right, and everybody comes here. And one of the first things that everybody gets met with is where they're at in their strength.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't not get met with it, because whether you're grappling with other people, you're like, wow, people are strong. Or you get on the calisthenics bars, and you're like, wow, this. Or you see people, just throwing weight around, or not. And you're trying to explain something that, to your point, is a very confusing part of strength culture, which is, what is the approach?
Yeah.
Like, because sets and reps is the approach, right? Or that's the common, when most people think that, how many do I do? What's that look like? And I was blessed with Lovato Jr.'s strength coach, Luke Tyree, which you would absolutely love. Luke Tyree is the first person who taught me that concept of like, bro, you just do something, and I just want you to do it.
Yeah.
And have fun with it, and then I want you to just go do something else.
Well, I think that's the biggest issue. I think people overcomplicate fitness, right? And fitness is not one thing, right? I think that the way that so I look at all this stuff as like language, right? And my language is strength, and in terms of specifically female athletes and Ian. I know Ian's gonna get mad that I say that.
Yeah,
but
Ian, we know you're not a girl.
I love you, Ian.
But he's handsome. He's a pretty.
So
Ian's a UFC fighter, by the way, and that's why.
But
that's one of these guys.
with a lot of that stuff, like fitness isn't one language, and there's different translations to fitness, right? And I think that the number one thing is just getting started. So I think a lot of people just, whether it's want to get stronger, want to lose weight, want to, you could say get toned, whether I don't really agree with that word, but like get toned and whatnot. But like, it's just do something, get started, right? And find a way to just build movement. And I think it starts as simple as like walking, right? And this is a deeper conversation, but movement doesn't have to be complicated. And I think that in the fitness industry, and I think that there's people trying to insert themselves as figures, and they try to make it more difficult than it is, right? Like I don't necessarily say, I don't like to sell exercise, right? Like I sell frameworks because, and what I mean by sell frameworks is like, I want people to understand the theory of what we're doing so they can then go and make a decision. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be around forever, right? And even if I am working with people, like I'm making changes now, I'm traveling more, and I'm not going to be there, So I need people to understand at the end of the day how to make a decision, how to go in the gym, how to pick up a weight and not be like, what the hell do I do with this thing, right? And that starts at a framework or an idea instead of me being there, sitting there being like, hey, do this many sets, this many reps,
right,
at this much time.
Building codependence.
Yeah, and like for me as a coach, I've never wanted someone to be dependent on me. I want them to want to be there and work with me and enjoy being around me, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I want them to go home and
to not need you, yeah.
And be confident, be confident. And because this is the other thing I'll say is like, what I do is such a small part of their day, right? It's an hour, sometimes a little bit more, and then the rest of the day is on them. It's on them to make that decision to eat more, to not eat as much, to go for that walk, to build in those habits that you need into a lifestyle, because I'm not there to guide you or hold your hand, Mm-hmm. And as much as I'd love to help everybody in that way, this idea of trainers just coming in and be like, just do this and then that's it, and then they leave and they're like, okay, well then he's not here, what do I do now? Because mm-hmm. a lot of what I like to help people do is, like I said, is build in confidence in a lot of these aspects of the gym. Now, when I started that, I had so I opened a gym in New York when I was 22. I had lost the 70 pounds. That was like a couple years later, and I was working at an awesome gym at the time called Black Sheep. It was a CrossFit gym, and that's where I had met my business partner. So when I was 22, I opened the gym in Albany, New York, where I'm from, and I did that for about 3 years. And then that was all that type of clientele, helping people learn the gym, feel confident in the gym. And a lot of our clients were people who had never stepped foot in the gym, And at that point, as a coach, being like 22, thinking I was like, oh yeah, I own my own business, like, I'm this, I'm that, blah blah blah. And I remember thinking like this coaching thing is like easy, and I was like, oh yeah, this is easy. That's all it is. I just got to tell people what to do, and that works. And then that's when I really started to take my career seriously, right? Because when I lost the 70 pounds, that's when I knew this is what I was going to do. Like, that's when I knew I was going to be a coach, be a leader in this field. And I gave myself, you know, an opportunity to just be as good as I could at this. And when I opened the gym, it's when I decided I was going to be a professional coach, right? Because there's being a coach, a trainer, there's like someone who's like, I'm going to do this for fun, make a couple dollars. And then I decided like, nah, this is going to be like my actual career. And through thick and thin, whether I was making, you know, $100 a week at the gym that I owned, or to now where, you know, I'm able to, you know, travel to places like this and have a client base and have supporting people who want to tune in on something like this and listen to me speak, or even have an opportunity like this to talk to you, you know. That all started from me losing the 70 pounds, you know. And as I've built up and as I built up the gym, you know, that was like my dream at the time, was to own a gym, and I did it. And to kind of, again, because I don't want to like go too deep into it, but like with that process about how I got into it, that's when I really decided to like refine my coaching, right? And I made a lot of mental shifts, and I learned from a lot of good people, and I took a lot of time and a lot of money to invest into myself, to put myself in the right positions. And this is where I started to like form this new mindset of fitness and this conversation I was having behind, for example, function, and really creating a system, or, you know, what I call now like the BG Perform method, right? But like of not being stuck in a certain way of thinking with fitness, because it is so diverse. It is so, you know, because I always talk about this, right? With losing weight, I could have someone shovel for 7 hours a day. If they eat right, they're going to lose weight. You know what I mean? Like, as long as they're doing some type of physical activity, they're going to get something. Now, in terms of progression and performance, that's where these details get more and more necessary, right? If you're Amanda, Ian, you know, these types of guys, like, you need progression, you need ideas, because there is a limited amount of time. But with the average person, you just need structure, and you need some type of environment to help you grow, you know? And outside of the fitness, environment is even more important. All this stuff is just so much more important than the actual working out. And this is what I started to realize, is because I was so hyper focused on the workouts as a coach. And I was like, the workout's got to be this, the workout's got to be that. And as I just said, like, it didn't matter if this person was shoveling, right? Like, if they were doing something active, you know, it's more about the supportive environment. It's the people around you. It's does your family actually support you? Does your significant other actually support you? Because I could give you anything in the world, right? For example, nutrition wise, I can tell you the perfect nutrition plan. I can tell you to eat steak. I can tell you to eat potatoes. If you don't know how to cook a steak, what good is it? You know what I mean? I have to give you ideas and information that works for you and your lifestyle. And I think that coaches sometimes try to fit people into these squares of like, this is the way I did it, so you got to do it this way, instead of here's how I did it, but here's the idea of what I had going into that, you know?
One thing that comes up for me that I think is in terms of getting people started, is, you know, and because this is my personal approach when people show up over here and they've never, you know, messed on the bars before. They've never messed with anything. I always say, look, you only do two things with your body: you push and you pull. So let's just start with things that push and pull, because to me,
this is a good conversation. Go ahead. I have a good place to take this.
Because I feel like people, like you said, they want to know, oh, what's the exercise, what's this, and I'm like, can you push your body and pull your body away from the earth? And let's just imagine that a rock climber is doing nothing but pushing and pulling the entire time, and let's look at rock climbers' bodies. And I think we're all impressed by that. It's certainly, you know, an impressive physique, and they don't have anything but a rock in themselves, pushing and pulling. But so obviously the question was, how did I get into training the elite level athletes, right? So with what you just said, getting someone started, like, I think that people look at athletics and they think these individuals are like superhuman, right? And I think they have superhuman abilities to adapt, right? But they're still people. So at the end of the day, like, for myself, this was a big shift for me, and I learned this from one of the guys that I learned from in Prescript, but is defining function, right? Is actually looking at, like, how can someone start, right? And function nowadays is kind of defined as, like,
squats and deadlifts and lunging and whatnot. And those are expressions of function, right? But if we look at function from a fundamental level, it's walking and breathing. That's what we were meant to do, right? So we have to start by walking and breathing, right? And if we can start by walking and breathing, that makes this process a lot easier, because then it's like, okay, if I can get better at walking,
I already do
right?
that.
And if I can get better at breathing,
Right.
then that's the start. And what I mean by that is our body works in that way best, right? Everything else, if we work on our body from that perspective, by association, we're going to be able to squat. We're going to be able to hinge the hip. We're going to be able to externally and internally rotate the shoulder. We're going to be able to move the spine in certain ways and flex and extend, right? And it starts from this understanding that we're not the same in terms of our background, but we all have hips, we all have shoulders, we all have spines, right? And as a coach, you have to give yourself an opportunity to be able to focus on the finer details. So building your framework from this capacity of, okay, here's where I define function. That's the start as a coach. If you want to be a great coach, you have to define what that means to you, right? You have to define what function as a mover means to you. And that makes it a lot easier for me, because I always have somewhere to come back to, right? And I think that what happens in coaching is that people get too far down the path of specialized information without actually having like a home base, right? So they're just paddling the canoe out in the ocean, and they turn around, they're like, oh wait, I don't know which way I have to go back to, as opposed to, I always know where my island is, right? I always know, no matter where I go, whether it's learning from you, which is, it's only been a day, but it's been awesome, whether it's, training MMA, whether it's going to these other places, I always know where I'm coming back to, right? I always know my map back to where I am as a coach. And that's helped me, because whether I'm helping, one of my old clients, Gail, who was 87, and she used to always bring me jelly and cookie. They were so good. But, or helping Amanda, right? And I think that people look at what I would do with Amanda or Ian, and they're like, oh, this must be in-depth, detailed, crazy stuff. And I'm like, I wish I could make it that, but it's not, it's a process. It's no matter what, Amanda is the same person as me, as any of the women.
Right, yeah.
And it's building a framework around that, that allows them to express function, or express these movements, and still be functional at heart, which is be good at walking and breathing, right?
And don't we think, like, from you guys' experience, my experience is that people, and I have this with myself too, but it's that people, when they've never strength trained before, or they haven't strength trained in a long time, their bodies have forgotten how to suffer.
Yeah.
And enjoy that suffering. Because there is, it's a pull-up when you can't do one is suffering to some.
Of course.
To
But I think and even looking at it like that, right, is like pull-ups and things like that. Like, this is where fitness becomes fun, right? Because when we understand the basics of fitness, and we understand having a starting pattern, having a point where we're not diving into the deep end right away, everything can be progressed and regressed, right? No matter what. It doesn't matter if it's, like I said, to the point of running, right? Running can be jogging, can be walking, can be, whatever. Like it all builds into something of these bigger patterns. But with that, there's got to be a start. There's got to be somewhere where we can have someone either build from or build to, right? And with like I said, with fit, what was the original question that you just said?
Well, we're talking about suffering.
Yeah. So suffering, right, is like, there's an idea of suffering, and then there's an idea of, like, obviously building up to the suffering. I don't think someone should suffer the first day that they go out and walk into a gym,
right.
Because that's how a lot of this stuff happens, and that's where people stop, because people come in, they get these coaches who are like, oh, all right, I'm going to put them through the worst workout of their life,
right.
And then they can't sit down for a week. And why would you expect someone to come back?
Why do I want to do that every
So
weekend?
when I start this process with somebody, it's information, right? I have a process that I go through. I tell everybody I need at least 3 months of your time. If you hate me after that, that's fine. But, like, I need at least 3 months. This first month is not even for the workouts. Like, that's the best part. It's not even for the workouts. It's for conversation. It's for learning my language, learning how to cue these individuals, learning where their faults are, right? Like, because all of this stuff that's going to come up is the reason why they're with me, Like if they were good at decisions, if they were confident in themselves, if they were able to,
If they were self-motivated.
they wouldn't be here. Why would they be with me?
Right.
So there's things that they're coming to me for that I need to learn as a coach that are the first things. The workout, again, is the easiest part. It's literally the easiest part. Like half the time it doesn't even, truly matter what you're doing. It's that first month is, how do you learn? What kind of conversation are we going to have? What is your background? What do you enjoy? Right? Because that's going to build a relationship that they're going to be vulnerable and actually trust me, so that when they do fuck up, because they will, they're going to come back and be like, hey, Brandon, I fucked up. Instead of being like, nah, I did it. It's not working. I don't know why it's not working, And this aspect of, is what I truly believe led me to these bigger opportunities, right? I think because I've always stayed true to that, in which I believe in terms of coaching, and I always have my island to come back to, right? That whenever I've gone and learned new information, I've been able to refine it, review it, and then put it back into what I believe, right? So to bring it back a little bit more, after I had my gym in New York, I needed to make some changes. There was a lot of stuff I felt trapped. I felt stuck as a coach. I felt like I wasn't progressing. And I think it's obviously for bigger reasons. So I made that change. And the first time I left home was shortly after that. I moved to Nashville and in Tennessee. I lived there for about 8 months. And that's where I really was like the first time I was on my own. And like I said, the gym was such a dream of mine that when I left, it was so hard, dude. Like I cannot tell you I was in a worse spot after that because, I worked 3 years, night and day, 80 hours a week to get that place to a spot where it was functioning as a facility, right? And then to
welcome to business ownership.
Exactly. And then it didn't work, right? And it's still open to this day. They're still open. It didn't work for me, right? So I made that change and I moved and I didn't know what I was going to do because I didn't know like what the next point was. But I always believed, like I said, I always believed as a coach that I knew I was supposed to be in this position. And I knew that if I trusted myself and worked on these foundations and redefined these things for myself, that I would, have these opportunities. So shortly after that, I was there for 8 months. I got an opportunity down in Florida at the gym I was working at, which is Drew Strong Performance. And that's where I got introduced into the athletics. And I had the opportunity where I kind of made a shift at that point. That's when I dove into martial arts for at least 3 years at that point. I think when I opened the gym was when I really dove into the martial arts. And that's when I started to fall in love with that whole, I guess, style, right, of training. And I got my opportunities in Florida. And I think, like I said, with these opportunities, because there were some big names. Right away, I was training Dustin. I was helping with Dustin fight Connor. And that was hard because I'm a huge Connor fan. But I was helping.
See, I can't help my mortal. No, okay, right. Are you Irish?
I am.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'll explain it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Huge Connor fan. But so got thrown right into the mix, and I've always found myself to stand out because of my ability to kind of what we've been talking about this whole time is have a framework as a coach, right? And have an understanding of what is the foundation of what I want to do and where does it go from there. And I got thrown right into the fire, like I said, with helping Dustin, with helping these fighters. And, it led to a lot of things. And, the female side of it actually kind of just got dropped into my lap because there was a couple people that I worked with early on that were women who were fighters, and they were getting back into it. And I helped them. I kind of helped them redefine some things. I helped them think about the gym differently, and how much this can actually help your career. Because one thing in martial arts that I've learned is that like a lot of these guys, I don't know if it's resistance or fear of the gym, but like they don't know how to utilize it to the best of their ability, right?
Because they're so different.
Yeah.
Training for jiu-jitsu, training MMA, wrestling, striking is so different than strength training, and they both have, they both mutually share effort, right?
Yeah.
There's no question. The thing about, let's just call it martial. I'm going to use that term in general. Martial arts training is that in a way it's an activity. it can be playful and fun, and you're getting all of these reward sort of responses. Oh, that worked. That didn't work. Oh, get out of that. Like there's all this stuff that's going on, like almost like, again, a competitive game.
Yeah.
And strength training sometimes does not feel like that.
And I think, and this is where I started to see that, and this is where I again started to develop this framework of like understanding the base of function, right? Walking and breathing. Then from there, understanding that all this stuff is skills, right? Like conditioning is skill, strength is skill, and like we were talking about yesterday on the bar, you know, like strength isn't just something you just do, right? Like there's a process to getting strong, right? There's mobility, there's stability, right? Like that equation I told you yesterday is something that I've been taught is mobility and stability, then strength, right?
Okay.
If you cannot create range of motion, if you can't resist force at a range of motion, then how can you produce force, right? And strength, that's all strength is, right? Strength is producing force. It doesn't matter how you produce the force, but that's all it is producing force. So, you know, when we start to look at that, you know, that's where, you know, you can start to take basic fundamental patterns of health and bring that all the way into performance, right? Because performance is, you know, expressions of basic fitness overall. So, you know, in all of that, like I said, with coaching, with training, it all comes down to understanding that basic framework and then progressing, right? And as you further pursue that, you realize how much, again, you don't know and how much you have to learn. But like I said, you feel at like, and again, with these athletes, right? You see these athletes, and sometimes, and we were having again the conversation yesterday, you see them move and you're just like, what? Like how? Like how does that?
Right. Sometimes I see them stand. And
Exactly.
I'm just like, Jesus, how'd this person become so skilled in this craft? And they're standing with this collapsed, and their feet are turned. I mean, there was one guy. I had one of my fighters, Josh Bergman, who was an old school, UFC guy back in the earliest days when it really started to take off, and we had a fight against another guy named Alex something. He's still in that welterweight division, even now because he was a young and up and comer. But he walked with the flattest feet, turned out like I was like, this guy cannot be athletic. There's no way. And I watched him. I was doing tape on him. I watched him. I was like, well, he's actually figured out how to move that body with all that structural, I would just call it, structural misalignment or
Yeah, and I think like even for myself, when you're looking at something like that, this is another big shift that I made as a coach. Is like I don't believe necessarily in this idea of like posture, right? Like that you need to be in a specific way of your body. Like what I believe in is awareness, right? Being aware of, if I am in a position, can I create movement in the opposite direction, right? Or can I just create movement in general? Because at the same breath where I say function is walking and breathing, and we all have hips and shoulders and spines, the way they're like on a structural level created in our body is different, right? And the way that some of our sports, right, like jiu-jitsu, some of those anatomical variations benefit you, right? Some of the things in baseball benefit you. Some of the things in basketball benefit you, right? But they're not going to benefit you in other ways. But does that inherently make it bad? No, right?
No.
All I teach is when someone comes to me is like, hey, if we're going to get really good at your sport, right? I look at it like a tree, and this is how I usually teach it, is like everybody has a trunk of a tree, right? And there's branches, and those branches that grow are the specifics for your sport, right? If you're a baseball player, you're going to have different branches, right? And think of all the trees that we see on a daily basis, right? But they all have the same thing in common. There's a trunk, and then there's branches, and then there's leaves. The branches being the skills, and then the leaves being like the specific subset of those skills, right? So for me as a coach, when I step into performance, I don't look at draining somebody. I don't look at being that dude that they come in and being like, yeah, I'm the strength coach. Like, I look at it as the only spot in their day that they can control what happens from when they walk in to when they leave. I can adjust any intensity. I can adjust any movement, any tempo, any set range, any rep range, any weight, right? It's hard in a jiu-jitsu gym. You know, you say you're going to flow until someone gets their hand around your neck, and then you're like, oh, I'm not getting choked out. You know what I mean? And your stress jumps up to 100. But like in the weight room, it's one of those things where I can literally adjust and say, you're going to take a step here. And it's, you know, over exaggerating, but like I can manipulate every single aspect of what they do to get exactly what I need out of that session. And that starts from understanding basic human patterns, right? And true function, and then expressing that skill, right? And if you have a broad base, if you can move well in terms of function, right? And that's what I'm going to build all this back in so you guys understand it. But if you understand from an aspect of walking and breathing, and you take that and you build a basic understanding of movement, right? No matter what you do, whatever sport you do, you're going to be able to then do your skill work and be good at it, right? It doesn't matter if Amanda was punching or throwing a ball. I think she would have been great at whatever she decided to do, but punching and kicking and beating people's faces was just what she decided to do, you know? And the same thing for Ian. Ian is super athletic. He's pretty athletic, if you ever but he's
a special mover.
Yeah,
for sure.
but like I think no matter what other sport he was going to be good at, he was going to be good at, because it's not about that. Like the one thing that I always tell people and tell these athletes is like I give them the ability to not second guess their body, right? When they go into that environment, when they have to strike, when they have to do jiu-jitsu, when they have to wrestle, there's no, I don't want them to be like, can I do that? Like, can I move here? It's just flowing. They shouldn't have to second guess, right? And obviously that takes time and that takes effort, but you know, that process of like, hey, we're building awareness overall, right? And strength comes from that. And that's why I call myself a professional coach and not really like a strength coach, because I think people get that confusion of like, hey, someone's going to work with you and they're just going to get super strong and lift heavy weights. And that's not the case. You know, what I like to do is build the awareness that strength can be this, it can be this. It can also be, exactly what we're doing in this camp this week, which is movement, right? Because there's certain strengths that are necessary to have there. And especially even with Nelson, what we're going to do today, that's a different kind of strength, right? You know, there's a lot of stuff that goes along with that I, again, as trainers, as coaches, we put ourselves into boxes of like, I'm a strength coach, so I have to stick with strength, right? I think my foundation is always going to be a barbell, a dumbbell, a kettlebell, but like me learning this stuff is to better enhance everything else that I do, right? And me learning this stuff is to find it and say, hey, you know, maybe I'm not going to do this full time, but like this is great information, you know? The calisthenics, everybody should be able to move their body, right? Maybe I won't work out at calisthenics all day because it's just not what I enjoy. Like I just enjoy heavy weight, I enjoy barbells and dumbbells, but at the same time, doing pull-ups and muscle-ups is something that is a skill, right? And I look at fitness as like general fitness as having the skill to do whatever you want, whenever you want, just like money, right? Everyone wants money. It's like, do you want money or do you want the ability to do like whatever you want, whenever you want, with whoever you want, right? And fitness is the same idea. It's like I should be able to wake up in the morning and go play with my kid if they want to play soccer, or, you know, climb a mountain with my significant other, or, you know, and all that starts at the gym, right? And understanding movement on a level of not just, you know, again, moving heavy weight, but actually enjoying that process and saying, okay, well, now I'm confident I can do anything that I choose to do, right? And then, you know, turning that into performance, like I said, with someone who's specific in the sport, once you understand that and you get them to a level of like basic GPP, then you start to get into the skill work. Then they can really, you know, give their full efforts towards that sport and get the most out of it, right? And it's not about me stepping in and saying, you know, Amanda has to bench 315, she has to squat, whatever, because that doesn't necessarily equate to positive.
Right. Is that really the mission?
Yeah.
Is it to get her as physically strong as she could be, or is it to get her as strong as is necessary
Exactly.
to complement her fighting and
Exactly.
what she's doing?
And that's all I do. I go from a minimum effective dose model. I do the least amount of work possible to get the most amount in return, right? And there's things in my coaching model that reflect that, whether it be kind of the length tension relationship that I talked to you about yesterday with each muscle in the body, or just the model of programming, right? Just understanding, like, if you had a hard sparring session that day, you know, maybe we're not going the 90%, the 100% that I had planned. And as a coach, you know, that's one of the biggest things as well, is being able to adjust and adapt and not let the ego step in, right? I don't know that I've ever wrote a program that I think like 99% of the time when I write something, I have to change it, right? Whether it be because I'm in the middle of it and like, oh wait, this would be better if we did this, or it's like, hey, they're just not feeling good, or they're feeling great, and it's like, all right, let's go with it, right? When there's fire in the kitchen, cook, you know what I mean? Like, go for it. So like as a coach, when you are looking at these high level athletes, when you're looking at these people who, again, are the best at what they do, like, and this, I was just having this conversation with Nelson before, like, being around someone who is literally the best ever at what they do is so different. Like, it gives me goosebumps to even think about it, because a lot of us don't understand the work that goes into that, but understand that just being around that mindset is just like changing. It changed me. Like, seeing someone who, without question, you know, Amanda lost the belt. Then she came back. She's like, you know, I'm her, right? I'm coming back. Like, that was a mistake. And then to see the performance that she put on after the work is just like, it's like, whoa, like, she really is like that person, you know? And then it made me think differently in a lot of ways, because I know I can be the best coach that I want to be if I believe and trust that process, you know? And again, with Amanda, she has this mindset, she has this belief, she has this just work ethic that when she comes into the gym, she gets it done. You know, it doesn't matter how it's done. And then that's the same for me. It's like, it doesn't matter how it's done as long as we're taking a step closer, right? Mm-hmm. And the same thing in fitness, the same thing in everything else that I do is when I wake up in the morning, I do my best to try to think of like, how can I take one step towards getting better, right? Even with this learning process, right, of making these changes, going to different countries, you know, kind of giving up what I know as like a life to follow Ian and do this is a learning process, right? This is how I'm getting better, you know, and this is how I'm evolving as a coach. And whenever that time comes that I'm able to like step back to my island, right, because I'm taking a pretty big leap from that island, I'll be better because I know where I'm coming back to and how I can evolve that process as we go. And like, you know, to kind of sum it up, like that's training athletes, right? Training athletes is understanding they're still humans, right? They're not anything crazy, right? The only thing that's really different is once they get close to a fight, right? The last 4 weeks is like the only thing that you'll ever see that's different that I do, right? And I think one of the things, again, as an athlete, people look at it and they try to get fancy very quick. And I think that one of the things for me is, what's more important, right? Is attaching a band to something and going fast important, or is making sure that internal rotation of the hip is a little bit better so that they can get that little extra inch, right? Where am I going to spend my time as a coach? Am I going to spend my time working on things that look good for Instagram, or am I going to spend my time doing things that maybe they don't see, right? And I can explain to them. And that's one of the biggest struggles I've had as a coach, and I'd imagine you would too, is like, you love this stuff on a level that you could explain this. Like, how deep could you go, right? Like, if someone asked, they could probably sit there for 10 days like you do here, and that's why these people come here. With the average person, they don't necessarily care, right? They just want to get better, they want to feel better, and it's our job as a coach to read that and understand that, but be able to have both conversations, right? When you do certain exercises, what, you know, like, what is the gist of it? You're just trying to get stronger, you're just trying to move better. Then there's the analytical aspect of it, the anatomical aspect of that. And you have to be able to describe both as a coach to fully understand it. And one of the things that I've struggled with is some of these guys, they don't care. They just want to get better, right? A lot of these guys don't necessarily care about the movement. They're just like, hey, just get me better so I can fight and win, right? Mm-hmm. And some of those people ask those questions and you tell them. But when you do that, it's always good to find those people that love to learn along with you. And be able to explain it and let them kind of feel that. But like I said, with the athletes, they're humans, and it's nothing, you know, I hate to make it sound so simple, because at the same time it's not, but understanding that, like, when you have that base as a coach, you can train anybody to be great, lose weight, gain weight, and actually enjoy the process too, which is a big thing, because a lot of people, you know, they don't enjoy that process. They don't actually go into the gym and feel excited to learn or push themselves to actually want to, you know, develop anything past like basic stuff. You know what I mean?
So to sum up your general approach, if you have to put it into like a sentence,
yeah,
and you want to leave these guys with your, what's the takeaway from you?
To influence the highest level, highest standard of health and performance. Make sure that when someone sees me, sees my name, they know it's the highest standard of not only movement but like awareness and capacity, right? That there isn't, it's not a gimmick. It's not, you know, I want people to understand and know when they do communicate with me, when they do talk with me, that they're getting the best of the best.
And what is it that you want to leave them with in terms of, like for these guys, if they're getting started with strength, what's your sort of like, here's your basic?
Yeah. So
path?
actually, I'll give you guys this, right? So like, there's six basic patterns that I follow in terms of just getting better, right? You're gonna squat, you're gonna hinge. You got single leg, squat and hinge. You have push, vertical and horizontal, so out in front, over your head. You have pull, vertical and horizontal in the same capacity, and then there's core, and then there's anti-rotation, rotation, flexion, extension, and then anti-flexion, extension, right? That's very specific. But if you follow that and you do one of those movements throughout the week consistently, you're going to be a better mover and you're going to get stronger, right? So squat once, hinge once, do single leg work once, do core work once, do pushing and pulling once, right? In some capacity. And you can do some research on that. If you guys, do have questions, obviously I'm always here, but that's a very basic place to start, and add some walking in, right? And then that's health. If you can do that stuff consistently throughout the week, you're going to be a healthy individual no matter what.
Yeah, and to me, that's a great, it's like how do I approach this general idea? I want to be stronger, but I'm intimidated by the whole process. But I like what you did. In that you just reduced it to, these are the ways a human body moves. Make sure you're contacting that one of them each.
And then the last thing I will say is, like, it doesn't have to be that either, right? It can be, like your method. It can be calisthenics, like whatever it is. Just make sure that when you're starting, you're understanding, like, obviously why you're getting into it, and just move. That's the basic thing, right? And like, don't overthink it. Move. But there are methods to whatever it is that you do choose. That there's probably someone out there that you can ask for help that will help you. And I'd say start there, and if you start there, you're gonna be money.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
All right, Nelson. Let's pick up here on something a little different, which I think is really interesting as well for me, which is the world of calisthenics. Because calisthenics is basically, pulling your body.
Body weight training, yeah.
It's body weight training. It can, you can throw some fun toys in there like kettlebells and, sort of free weights of different kind. But calisthenics general model is you and you against gravity.
Correct.
And one of the things that I think is, for me, the most powerful and yet intimidating parts of calisthenics is grip strength. And because I tell you, the first thing that people experience when they grab a bar is how well they can hold on to the bar.
Or how quick they fall.
How quick they fall off the bar, right. And so I feel like that's the first sort of stage of development, and it's the first barrier you have to get past.
Correct.
To even want to work in the world of calisthenics.
Yes, basically when I started working with new clients, with new students, the very first the assessment phase, or the very first phase of the process is to see where they are. And the most common result when people start working calisthenics, they have never worked calisthenics. Differently than working with someone as a professional athlete is easier easier in a way because they understand, they're convinced. They don't need to trust the process. It's not a convincing situation that needs to happen. With this situation, as assessing the individual and seeing where they are. And as you say, when it comes to bars, when it comes to rings, when it comes to doing calisthenics and maneuvering your own weight, the lack of a strength is a very real. Calisthenics is very real in the sense that it will show you your lack of a strength immediately. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter what your craft is. Calisthenics will show you how you can handle or not your own weight. And then the very first thing I do is stances, either if it's pushing patterns or if it's at the bars, just have you hang on the bars. Having had that experience of holding the bar. If you cannot hold the bar, if you cannot hold the rings, if you cannot hold yourself on the bars, on the rings, then we can't do much. I mean, there's not going to be a pull-up, there's not going to be a push-up, there's going to be fun for you to work with if you cannot hold yourself. And that's the very first thing that I personally start doing with customers, or I'm not going to say customer, but students. We had a conversation yesterday with one customer or student.
It's
So
great, yeah.
when the students comes to you, the very first assessment that I do is hang them on the bar, and just trying to make them play with it, swing a little. Because the very first thing they try to do is like, when they have never done a pull-up, they get on the bars and they try to do a pull-up where they don't have anything built for it.
Right.
So,
they destroy all hope right out of the gate. They're just like,
completely.
Fuck.
It's like,
Yeah.
hey, wait a second. You're not there yet. Let's just build a relationship with this tool, which is the bar, so you can start working on it. And I haven't hang, I haven't swing, I haven't hang on the bars, jump, and land on the feet, and try to be playful with it. I think that one thing that B was talking about is how in nutrition or exercising, we as a society have built all this guilt around it. So we work out as a punishment because we ate this pizza, or we don't eat as a punishment because I have to lose weight and look well. And all this guilt makes, sometimes for the vast of the population, exercising is a punishment.
I struggle with it. It's bad.
It's a punishment, and it's not. I mean, fitness is in every aspect of your life. You have to go up the stairs, you have to pull this down, you have to push this away, you have to close the door, you're always using your own body weight. And being efficient on managing and creating that body awareness so you can move and start controlling your weight is the very first stage of developing strength, which is needed at the end of the day to be injury-free. As we say here at Budokon, we build strong, flexible, injury-free bodies, where fitness is just a sub-product of it. I mean, we see you, like, we never sell fitness as a product, where we say movement as a product, or as a lifestyle, correct, as a philosophy. And fitness is just part of it. It's required. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to explain it right now, but if you do martial arts, knowing how to protect yourself will be, or survive.
It's the key to entry is what I usually call it. Like,
yeah, I mean,
ticket to entry.
You need to understand that it's a sub-product of it. And when I assess people and start working with the students, that's probably my main first focus, is to, all right, try to peel off the guilt around this. Make your pieces with whatever you need to make pieces with. Trust this process, because once you get all that off and you start trusting the process, it's gonna suck at first. You're gonna fall. Your forearms, you won't be able to grab things easily after the first practice. After today, just kidding. I'm scaring the guys over here. Once you get that, then the building of strength becomes, I want to say fun, but it will become necessary for what you are trying to achieve. And that, I'm building it for the entire population. And it builds the same for when you get to the highest level, let's say for calisthenics gymnasts, all right? These guys, the Olympic gymnasts, I mean, their control and what they can do with their bodies is just a perfect example of how high and far this quest is. So, but to being functional, to going back to what we've been talking here, to being functional, to have it as a lifestyle, I mean, the strength work is just, I think it's necessary. I mean, as well as, and it won't be cut in 1 hour. It won't be cut with, especially with yogis, especially with regular people, especially with people that believe that they can get everything they need for the bodies in 45 minutes of a, I don't know, boot camp thing, or even a CrossFit, or even working 1 hour a day, Budokon. Will not cut it. I mean, you need to accrue it throughout the day. I believe in volume training. One thing that I also recommend to my students is volume it up. I mean, maybe you won't have the time to spend 2 hours on the bars, or you won't even have the physique to spend 2 hours on the bars. So throughout the day, find yourself a little break from, instead of going straight to the, let's say you work in an office, you go straight to the coffee and get your coffee. Well, before you do that, why don't you do why don't you go up and down the stairs? I do that myself. Like when I don't work in the corporate world anymore, but when I did, I used to do it. Like I remember everybody was so confused about what I was doing. It's just because I understand how important it is to build strength, to first have an understanding that strength is applied in everything.
Well, I like what you're saying about volume when because professional athletes, they work out of volume. I mean, it's just the volume is high.
You'd be, like I said, you'd be surprised. I like when I start working with some of these guys, I literally have to like, it's not even like working out. I have to like stop them from working out.
Right, because they're so used to that output level. Yeah. And I think it's important that but when you're thinking of the average person, their volume is so low that you're you're trying to increase volume. Yeah. So be busy all day moving your body in powerful ways. And I also think it's interesting to me what came up when you were saying earlier about failing at the grip is how people just don't like to experience their weakness. And so that's just that they get up there, they jump up, they go, oh, well, I mean, I don't want to just keep contacting what I can't do all day.
Deny on it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, if they don't shift out of that thinking into I love to fail versus I love only to succeed, I love only to feel when I'm doing something well, they're never going to push past that weakness that they're at.
I use the phrase a lot when I say that everybody wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die.
Right.
So I say no one wants to do the work. I mean, nowadays we seek comfort. We're very good at creating comfort, and it's really hard we are a very small percentage of the general population, and how a general population are, as you said, they just want to avoid having to fail, or having to, I look stupid doing it, or I suck at this.
Or the effort. It's hard.
Of course,
they keep coming back to it's hard.
And the longer you deny it,
it's
the longer that
labor.
point.
It's manual labor. I think that's the thing too. I just want to say this.
Manual labor.
Yeah, I want to say this so everybody hears it. Nobody wants to do manual labor, even in the regular world.
Yeah.
That manual labor is like, oh fuck, I'd much rather push buttons, stare at a computer, tap my fingers.
Having an electric bicycle instead of having a regular bicycle.
For sure. So you start asking somebody to do what is, in essence, carrying boulders around. Yeah. Going and get your water from that distance to this distance. Nobody wants to fucking do that anymore. Right. Because we've all learned you don't have to. We have machines for that. Yeah. We have technology for that. Why would I manual labor anymore when 99% of my day doesn't even involve it?
Yeah.
And so our production, to your point, our productivity level, our output level, our volume level is so low when we start that suddenly we're like, oh, what the fuck is this? I saw this carrying weight around.
Yeah, I think that's why
they cannot handle it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's why like having guidelines, like basic guidelines for humans is important. Like if you should be able to move for 60 minutes regardless of what you do, right?
Yeah.
If you can set a guideline or baseline of, doesn't matter what you're doing, like you should be able to walk for 60 minutes straight. You should be able to do something that you can start at for 60 minutes and start there, right? And having like actual lifestyle guidelines as opposed to like, chasing these bigger topics like Nelson's talking about.
Yeah, and it's so common to see that rejection to training. And what I have experienced when I start working with people on calisthenics, and there is also another positive point, right? And it's not just talk about the negative and the denial. But once people peel this off and they start going through it, faking it until you make it. Because at the beginning, I mean, you have to force it. It's just, I mean, you have to create muscle memory. You have to create habits around it, like eating well, sleeping well, stretching. I mean, personally speaking, I was someone that never stretched. Played rugby for 15, 16 years. And hey, let's go to the game. And I did that for years, and then I started paying the price, right? I started paying the price early, and people that don't or neglect their manual labor work, eventually it's so common. They're 50s, they can't walk, they have bad knees, they have hernias everywhere. And it's like you avoid this, and the bill's gonna come. You're gonna get an invoice later, and it's gonna be way more expensive than
with interest.
just staying healthy and having a healthier lifestyle, which includes eating well. I mean, like we believe, and personally, the company that we have developed in Miami, we believe there are 3 pillars for healthy lifestyles. As the physical, which includes manual labor, movement, fitness, and nutrition. Then you have your spiritual growth, and then how you love, how you connect, and then you have your psychological, your whatever you were programmed with, whatever you are carrying through your life. And neglecting any of these 3 in any shape or form will just make the tripod fall eventually. So we focus on our work in Miami, focus in the physical. That's our product. Someone asked me the other day, what's your product? I mean, well, we teach movement, we embrace the physical. We don't neglect this too, because we're not experts on it. This is not my craft. My craft is calisthenics, and on the other hand, nutrition. And it's so important that you don't have guilt around these 2, because the more guilt you have, the worse you're gonna eat. The more guilt you put on it, the less you're gonna move. And at the end of the day, that affects your spiritual world, your mental world, and then everything around you.
And not to cut off, but like when you, like I think people don't put enough thought into what we do as coaches and movement, because when you go into a room and you're not confident about how you look, how you feel, how you move, where are your thoughts, right? It's all on that shit. Yeah, instead of being like, who's in front of me? How can I have a conversation with this person? How can I connect with these people? Like the spiritual and mental aspect of that starts at movement, right? From a physiological standpoint, your body actually working better, and then obviously like clearing your head up where you can actually have the opportunity to even think about having those relationships and whatnot, you know, and think about, it's not every healthy person, right? Everybody who takes care of themselves isn't like a good person to talk to, but I'd imagine, 95% of the people who even in this space, right, who take care of themselves, who look at fitness like that, they're good people to talk to, and they're good people to have in your life, And the people who are miserable and don't move and don't take care of themselves, they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
What's your, so Nelson, if you have to summarize your, approach in a sort of in a sentence or two, how would you get a person started, and sort of what is your general working model?
All right. I mean, like as I said, like our very first approach is to work with the why. All right. What do you want? What are you trying to do? I'm not going to help you lose weight, because if you work with me, you will lose it. So I won't measure your body fat, because if you work with us, it will be gone. It's just, that's not our approach. So first, setting up the why, and then working on the basics, as he was saying before. And the basics of handling our own weight relies on 2 things: pushing and pulling. We pull and push. We open the fridge, we pull. We close the fridge, we pull and push. I mean, like it's on everything that we do. I mean, that you need to do 100 pull-ups every day, unnecessary. But finding that calibration point where being strong and flexible makes sense for your goal. I see if you're a professional athlete, well, you do have to put 3-4 hours of training every day. Different than if you're a regular Joe. A regular Joe, I mean, maybe 3-4 hours will do it too. I mean, like 1 hour will not, as you said in once a class, I mean, 1 hour will not cut it for a lifetime of bad decisions.
Yeah,
You know?
you can't have shit posture for
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go to a yoga
23
class.
hours
You know
and
what I'm saying?
fix
No.
it in an hour, yeah.
So creating that mindset is very important because professional athletes, I'm gonna take that example again, they're already convinced. They trust the process. They have, it has flavor there. They know what it is. They know, they develop grit.
And they're already into manual labor. Like in fact, what most people don't understand is that professional athletes are your blue collar workers out there.
Yeah.
They don't mind picking that fucking rock up
Yeah.
and moving it across.
Oh,
They like it.
And they know it's gonna be beneficial for
100%.
them.
Yeah, they're not prissy about it. That's the difference. That's why they're where they're at.
Correct.
And then you got these other folks that are, so they have so much resistance to resistance.
Yeah.
How ironic is that?
Yeah.
You
Stop
know?
resisting.
I'm like,
man.
hey, why don't you turn all that resistance you have in here
Yeah.
and put it on that fucking bar out there,
Yeah.
and then you'll be strong.
Well, like I
And
said, I think it's
and it's
because
a win-win situation. Like once I experience it with my customers, with my clients, with my students, I have a little bit of everything. But it's a win-win situation. Your confidence levels are going to rise. Your security levels are going to rise. Your stress levels are going to drop. It's just such an easy therapy of life to be active, to go out there for a walk, to go to the
Right?
beach
It
and
produces,
swim.
immediate results.
Yeah, I stay active. I mean, for me, it's easy because since I was 5 at these sports, I've been hyper all my life. I mean, if you saw me while B was talking, I couldn't stop moving. That's who I am. And then my mom solved it. She said, okay, do 7 sports. And I did sports all my life since I was 5 until today. So for me, grit is built in my core. So I understand it. So only someone that done sports at a high level understand what it means to have no gas, no energy, and keep pushing forward. And that's one of the most important. I think there was a study made in a university here in the United States where they study all these people in different areas, and they came to a conclusion that success is not skill, success is not learned. Whoever was more successful were those that have grit to keep going, to keep coming down and getting up again. I met B yesterday, and I know his background, so we were rolling a little bit, and I was like, everybody was rolling, and he and I were sitting in the back of the mat, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to ask him to roll. Okay, hey, can we roll? And then he was miserable for me. I mean, he was just doing, he was very soft on me, but he was beating my body left and right. And I kept on going, let's go one more. Let's go one more. Because eventually I was able to like swing one leg and get in on half guard. Okay, that's, okay, we moved, let's succeed.
Success.
don't worry, they got me back after.
But it's grit. If you don't learn the importance of grit to anything, and it applies, the bars is just a tool, as I said at the beginning. Then that grit that you learn in there, it goes in your relationship, it goes in your work, it goes.
Yeah, you wonder why people can't stay together. Well, they don't have grit.
They don't have the grit. I mean,
You
like,
wonder why people can't work their shit out with each other. They don't have grit.
have the grit.
They can't stay in the difficult space. They can't stay in that moment. They can't
Yeah.
stay in it. It's like, fuck, let it go.
yeah. I mean, it's so important. And I think that strength, there's something that Melaine told me once, and I use it with everyone. There is grace. Imagine a panther jumping down of a tree. You're not gonna hear a huge, it's just gonna go. Why? Because the panther's strong. And there's grace that comes with strength. And that applies. I mean, I couldn't close with anything better than that. Nothing applies better than the grace that comes from strength.
Beautiful. Guys, thanks so much for, being with us. I hope that there were some interesting takeaways for you around that. I think the closing of, grace is the product of strength. And I think, Brennan, you had another formula that you kept saying to me. What is strength is?
Stability plus mobility equals strength.
Stability plus mobility equals strength. Strength produces grace. It takes grit to get strong. Grit produces all the good shit in your life. It gives you character.
Yeah,
It
builds
gives you,
character.
it builds character. And it is the thing that we all avoid the most. And here's what's ironic. Because you get the most out of it, it's also the hardest thing to do, which is, very interesting. But think about it. Right now, commit yourself to getting stronger and just watch the magic happen.
It will happen
Okay.
automatically.